fly fishing section of the video. Les Hill and Chris Wiblets down here behind us have kindly offered their time to come out for the day. Les has been instructing Chris already. They've had a couple of days on the river and Chris hasn't got a bad cast, so hopefully we'll catch a couple of fish. We'll follow the same format as the rest of the video. We'll go over the basics of fly fishing, what it is, then we'll go into the gear requirements, and then we'll go out and hopefully catch some fish on the river. So Les, what is fly fishing and how does it differ from spin fishing?
Well, I guess that the basic difference between fly fishing and other fishing is that you're fishing with a feathery sort of lure, and it's something which is very light and therefore very difficult to cast. So to cast a fly, this feathery lure, you have to have specialised equipment. You have to have a special rod, you have to have a special reel, and you have to have a special line. And whereas with spin fishing, you've got a lure which is quite a number of grams in weight and can cast out a line quite easily. With the fly, you're casting something which is very light, and therefore you need special gear.
Quite often I hear people talk about different types of fly fishing, dry fly fishing for example, as opposed to what other different types?
Well, there are 3 or 4 different types of fly fishing. I mean, for a start you get fishermen who go out in boats. They don't have to be too energetic, they don't have to be able to walk too far, and they just go out in their boat and they feed the line out behind the boat, and they've got a lure on the end of the line, and then they just troll it and drag it along behind the boat.
Is that what's called harling?
Yeah, harling or trolling.
Yeah.
So you've got that type of fly fishing, and then you've got what's called wet fly fishing. And wet fly fishermen, they fish with a fly which sinks in the water, and they tend to cast across the stream or slightly downstream and let the fly swing with the flow, as opposed to upstream fishing, which you do with a dry fly and a nymph. So with wet fly, you're fishing across the stream and down the stream, whereas with a dry fly and a nymph, you're fishing up the stream. And that's what I've been teaching Chris, and that's probably what we'll see mainly today.
So the classic fly fishing you see where a person's stalking along the side of the creek and fishing, that's your upstream?
That's the upstream approach. And people, when they're doing that sort of fishing, they're either fishing with a nymph, which is sunk below the water and floats naturally in the drift, or they're fishing with a fly which sits up on the top, which is the dry fly.
So with the fly, it's still the same as the spin fishing. You're still trying to imitate a food source.
That's right,
but,
yes.
But your food source is different, isn't it?
Yes. Well, with fly fishing, you're imitating probably 80% of the trout's diet. Most of the food that the fish live on are aquatic insects that live under the water or spend most of their life cycle underwater. And if that's 80% of their diet, then you'd expect to have 80% more chance of catching trout if you're fishing with what they feed on.
So why do people fly fish? Is it more effective than spin fishing, or just a completely different kettle of fish?
Yeah, if you take from day one of the season to the end of the season, throughout the season the fly fishing is going to be more successful. Now there'll be days when you go spin fishing and you'll catch more fish on the spinner. But day in, day out, the fly fishing is more effective.
But probably a bit harder to take up, and we're going to go through some of those basics today.
Well, it is a little bit harder to take up, but people have this perception that fly fishing is an art and it's so difficult to learn to cast and it's so difficult to cast a fly. But in fact, with a little bit of practice, anyone can do it.
That's what I like to hear. Alright, so we've been through what fly fishing is. We've covered some gear, and how about we just go down and get Chris into a bit of fishing?
Yeah, well, Chris is actually already into it.
Is he?
And he's fishing down there at the moment with a dry fly. Yeah. He's just fishing a nice little run, and he's casting a dry fly up into the run, and just floating it down and watching it. We haven't even got a nymph on at the moment, so we'll see how he goes.
Yep, we'll go down and see what he's up to.
Yeah.
Yep,
you got one. Well done. Oh, it's a beauty too. What a champion.
So did he take it dry, Chris? Or?
That's all he had on.
Yeah, he took it dry. He took it and it came up and really took it as well.
Oh, a beauty! like the look of me, did he?
No. So what just happened there? Les, what did you have on there?
We had a dry fly on there,
Yeah.
and Chris was just casting up line, and next thing the head came up and the nose came out, and he took the dry.
Good stuff.
There we are, well done. Champion.
So are you going to take that one home, or are you going to put them back?
No, there's too good a fish to take home. He has to go back in the river. But see, it's quite a brown looking fish, so it's obviously a resident fish, been in the river for quite a while. Not a fresh one, run one out of the sea. In lovely spots.
And if you can just see in the mouth there, how's it actually taken? Is the fly still in the mouth?
The fly is still on the mouth. And
It's just come in and taken that down.
yeah. And it just comes out as easily as that.
And is there any particular way you release the fish?
Yes, I'll face them upstream. In this case, the stream sort of in a reverse flow here, and I'll just face him into the current, and he'll get the water going through his mouth and through his gills. So he's getting plenty of oxygen there now, and very soon he'll start to wriggle, and away you go. There's a bit of life and a bit of kick in him now. So there you go, and away you go.
Good stuff. Requirements for the beginner to start fishing. You're holding a rod and line here, so maybe you can just go through the basics and how they differ and how it differs, I suppose, to spin fishing gear, which we've already shown in the video.
Yes, okay. Well, what Chris is fishing with here is it's a 9-foot rod. It's a 4-piece, so you can see the first piece comes up to here, and then this is the end of the second section. There are 2 more sections at the end. So 9 foot, and it's a 6-weight rod, and actually it has it written on the side here, 9-foot 6-weight rod.
Yeah.
And that 6-weight rod means that it's designed to be compatible with what we call a 6-weight line. And when you buy the line in the shop, they're actually numbered and labelled, so you know that you get a 6 or a 5 or a 4 or a 3 or whatever. So this rod goes with a 6-weight line, and this line is a weight forward line, weight forward floating. But I'm just as happy using a double taper, which means that the line is thin at the end and then tapers into a thicker section in the middle. So either a weight forward or a double taper line.
So you're talking about a 6-weight rod here and a 6-weight line.
Yes.
What other variants are there on it? Is there a different number, different weighted rod, and when would you use that?
Yes, the larger the number, then generally the heavier the rod and the heavier the line. So if you're fishing deeper water and using heavier nymphs, then you tend to use an 8-weight, 9-weight or 10-weight rod and an 8, 9, 10-weight line. Whereas if you're fishing dry flies on a small stream, you might go down to a 3, 4 or 5-weight rod and line.
So a 6-weight's a medium.
Yeah, it's a good
size.
standard. You can cast a weighted nymph with this and cast a dry fly. You know, it's a good medium sort of outfit for someone beginning upstream nymph or dry fly fishing.
Yeah. So from what we've already seen a spin fishing set and a spin fishing reel. The reel you've got on there looks quite a lot different to a spin fishing reel,
Right.
the egg beater style winder. What's the basics of the fly fishing reel?
Well, the mechanism of a fly fishing reel is much simpler than that of a spinning reel. In fact, the fly reel is basically a line holder. It does have some ability to, be tensioned up, or you can either lighten the tension or add to the tension, but basically it's a line holder. And the main difference between fly fishing and spin fishing is that with spin fishing you've got a lure which might be 20 grams or 30 grams in weight, and so it's got the weight to carry the line out and carry the line 30 metres or 40 metres.
Yeah.
Whereas with fly fishing you're fishing with something which is very small and something very light, and so the gear is designed to actually cast that very lightweight again out 20 metres or 25 or 30 metres.
So what's actually taking the fly or the nymph out if there's nothing on the end of it?
Yeah, the thing that takes the fly out is this line here. This line is weighted, and once you get 20 or 30 feet of line out, then the weight of the line, which is propelled by the flexibility of the rod, is enough to give the line speed and give the fly speed and cast it out. So it's the weight of the line that does the casting really.
And on the end of your line, what's going on the end of your line? Does the line just go straight on to the nymph, or is there?
Well, obviously this line is very thick and very visible, so you couldn't tie a nymph to that or tie a fly to that, and expect a self-respecting trout to take it. So you've got to have an invisible section between this line and your fly or nymph. And so what you do is you tie onto the end of this what we call a leader, and it's a piece of nylon which is often tapered, and that leader might be 9 feet, 10 feet, 11 feet or 12 feet long. And you can also tie onto that piece of nylon about this long, about half a metre or a metre, which we call a tippet. And so like this line is tapered, so is your leader and your tippet, they're tapered as well.
So that's it lays out nicely on the water.
So it lays out nicely on the water, and the tippet end of it is less visible to the trout.
So Les, now that we've been over the basic gear, while we're here by the river, would you just be able to run us through the basic action to use it? Just show us visually, I suppose, how to do it.
Okay, once you've got your line out in front of you, then the basic action is just slowly lift the rod tip, lift, and then a snap of the wrist. And I'll do it again, lift, snap of the wrist, back to about 12 o'clock, and then forward. And when you go back, you pause a bit behind, and the length of the pause relates to how much line you've got out. So here we go, back, and then forward.
So is it, you'd be faster if you've got less line out, and then as you get more and more line out?
The more line you've got out, the longer you pause behind. And the more line you've got out, the more power you have to put into it. See, I'm just casting with a very short line now, and so it's it's quite a gentle act. There's not too much power going into it. But I'll put a bit more line out, and okay, so I lift slowly, lift, and power, and then forward. Okay, I'm getting more line out, so I have to put more power into it. Okay, so I'm lift, power in, back, and then forward. And I lift, power in, and by power in I mean you just snap the wrist, and then hold, and then do the same action on the forward stroke.
And it's all about practice, isn't it?
It's all about practice.
Accuracy is paramount when it comes to landing that fly near the fish, isn't it? So a lot of practice on the back lawn, I imagine.
A lot of practice on the back lawn, and when you were practicing on the back lawn, all I would do for a start is I'd just lift and put it down on the lawn. Lift and put it down on the lawn. Lift, put it down on the lawn. And then when you've got the feel of that and you can do that, you can then start doing force casting in the air. So what I'm doing now is I'm not putting it down on the lawn, I'm keeping the line in the air. Okay, and I'm going to put it down this time, and I'll just follow through with the rod tip. Same action, but just follow through and let it drop.
And are you using that false casting to get the line out, to get the longer cast?
To get the line out, but also to change direction. I might want to go further left, or I might want to go further right, and so I use the false cast to keep the line balanced and to get that action and get that direction.
And how do you lay it out for the fish? Like when you cast, after you've done it, maybe a couple of false casts to get your line out,
okay.
How do you present it?
I do the same action, but I just follow through with the rod tip. So there we go, forward, and then I just follow down with the rod tip. And let the fly drop. So I lift, snap, forward, follow through, and down it goes.
Easy as that.
Easy as that.
So Les, we've spotted a fish just up ahead of us here, and it appears to be feeding away nicely. And we've just moved back from the bank, and I notice you're putting together some gear there. What are you setting up here, Les?
What I'm doing is I'm tying the tippet material to the leader. So again, round 4 or 5 times, and through there, and I find it, it's got it, and then I just pull that up, tight, and so you see one of the leader material is quite long. I can tie a dry fly to that, and the tippet material is quite short, and I'll actually snip that off so that it's quite short. And then I can put the nymph on the leader maybe a metre down, depending on the depth of the water. So if the water was only 18 inches or half a metre deep, I might go a little bit shorter with the tippet material. So I've got a dry fly on here, and I've got a nymph on here, and it gives the fish both options.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably pretty good to start with.
So what's the goal with the weight, Les? And what's the point in weight in the nymph?
Well, most food that trout take is taken very close to the bottom of the stream, to the bed of the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the trout are taking the food down there, then you want to get your lure down there. So a little bit of weight, you drop the nymph in front of the fish and it sinks down to the bottom, and then it's right at the zone where the fish is actually feeding.
So you want it bouncing along the bottom?
Well,
lightly,
not exactly bouncing, just
Yeah.
Just a little bit above the bottom.
Yeah.
So if a fish is feeding on the top and taking dry flies, then of course you feed in the zone where he's feeding. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't put weight on, you'd put something like a dry fly or a very small nymph, a very light nymph that'll stay buoyed up by the water. So you try and fish where the fish is actually feeding. So if he's feeding deep, you fish deep. If he's feeding on the top, then you fish on the top.
So if they're feeding a bit deeper and you're looking to get something down to them, a weighted nymph, you'd have to cast a bit further ahead?
Yes, you've got to be well ahead of the fish.
Yeah.
So you try and perhaps put the nymphs about a metre upstream from him.
Yeah.
Depends on how fast the water's flowing. If the water's flowing very fast, then you need more weight because your nymph's got to get down very quickly. But if the water's flowing fairly slowly, then it's got more time to sink. So all the time you've got to read the conditions. You've got to read how fast the river's flowing, how deep the river is, how deep the fish is feeding. And so you've got to be thinking on your feet the whole time, and of course continually changing your nymphs and your dries according to the circumstances you get confronted with.
Mm-hmm. And when you're casting out, how you've got to cast quite a bit in front of the fish. Do you land the floating line, the line part? Where does that land in relation to your fish? You can't have that landing on the fish, can you?
Well, you can, but
Yeah.
preferably not.
Yeah.
But it depends on where you're casting from, because sometimes you get in the river and you've got no choice as to where you can cast from because the water's too deep or it's too fast or whatever. But if you've got a choice, then you get into a position where you can put the nymph or the dry out to one side or the other. And also, where a fish is feeding, generally the water will be slower flowing in towards the bank and faster outside. So if you watch the fish, you'll see that often they feed predominantly in one direction. They might come more often in towards the bank, or they might go more often out to the outside. So you look at which way they're feeding more predominantly and try and fish on that side. But generally I try and feed on the outside because your nymph or your fly is going to be going past quicker, which gives the fish less time to actually make a decision. If you put it into the slow water, sometimes it doesn't float as naturally, and it's more difficult to tell when a fish is actually taken, particularly on a nymph.
You don't do what I do, which is usually landed on its head.
Well, often that won't matter.
Yeah.
It won't disturb them. Although, if you land it too short, often the fish will have to turn around to come and take it, and they're facing you when they actually take the nymph. So the striking is actually more difficult. So ideally, you want to put the nymph or the dry a metre, a bit more than a metre upstream, and maybe out to one side. Maybe better on the outstream side, the faster side. And then the fish takes it as it comes towards it, naturally in the drift like it would take a normal insect.
And how do you tell when it's taken the nymph or the dry? I mean, it's in the water, it's a tiny little fly. How do you tell that the fish has actually got it?
Well, with the dry fly, that's the easiest take to see, and you actually see the fish come up and you see the nose come out, and you'll see the mouth close over the fly. And then the trick is you've got to wait. You've got to wait for a couple of seconds before you strike, because once the trout's got the fly, his mouth is still open, and as he goes back down, the mouth will close, and that's the time for you to strike.
Yeah.
So people have various ways of making sure that they do wait the appropriate amount of time.
So when you say strike, you mean lifting of the rod?
Lift of the rod, yes.
Yeah.
And I was always taught to say, when the fish has come up and he's taken the fly, to say, "God save the Queen," and then to strike.
Yeah.
And that often worked. But with the nymph, sometimes you'll actually see the fish open his mouth and close it on the nymph, and so that's all the indication you need, and you need to strike fairly quickly. But
That's when they're down in the water. Yeah.
That's when they're down underneath the surface. But sometimes it's hard to detect exactly when the take has been made. So in that case, I watch an indicator or watch my dry fly. And if the dry fly dips into the water or the indicator suddenly stops, you've got to strike straight away. How deep is it there? Can you wade out a wee bit? Yeah. Yep, just go very quietly though, very easily. Can you see that copperweed floating on the surface over there?
Yep. One just
Matter of getting down to him, I think, Chris. Yeah, that's excellent cast. That went right over the top of him. He's feeding quite well. He's nymphing left and right. Yeah, very good. That's a bit left. Go about 3/4 of a metre to the right. Yeah, that's a good cast. And I think he's gone.
What's that?
He's gone.
That's
There was that one on top of him, yeah.
So Les, how can you tell if he's spooked or not, if the fish is spooked?
In this case here, the fish just suddenly moved sideways and disappeared.
Pretty easy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But sometimes if they're a little bit spooked, they just change their demeanour. For example, they may be coming up and feeding regularly on the top and taking dry flies or emerging flies. And if they become a little bit wary for some reason, then sometimes they'll change their feeding habit and they may just stop taking flies off the top and just feed underneath the surface and feed on nymphs. So any change in their behaviour can suggest that they've been alerted. I think probably we should move on, Dean.
Okay.
We could spend too much time on this.
So I've just moved on a bit and spotted a fish just on the bottom feeding out in the mid current, and Chris is just going to try and put a nymph over top of him.
Alright, Chris. Okay, you need slightly more line and you need to be out to the right by about a metre. Here he comes, here he comes. Yep, that's him. Well done. Let him go, Chris, if he wants to. Oh, a beauty!
So you can see now that Chris is trying to get that. Oh, he's got it now. He's got the line onto the reel. You got that first initial bit, haven't you, where you got to pull the line up to get it on the reel.
Keep him up fairly high, Chris, and bring him around because there's a snag just under where you are now. Take it down to the right. That's it. Now go up to the left yourself. You want me to net him for you, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, you get control first. Get control of your line, get control of the fish. Take a bit more line. Maybe shorten up a bit. I won't try to net him till his head's up on top. The head's down now, so it's no good to try and net him. Just be patient. Second
Good
time
start.
lucky.
So there, Les, I see you using the dry on the top and the nymph on the bottom. He took the nymph that time.
He took the
didn't
nymph.
Yeah,
But what happened when he took the nymph, the dry went down
yeah.
and it acted as an indicator.
So as soon as that dry goes under the water, you lift
Yeah.
the rod and strike.
Yeah, Chris was watching the dry, and as soon as it went down, he lifted the rod and bingo, he got it. Yep, nice little henfish. We'll put him back so he lives to fight another day.
Beautiful colour on him.
Mm. There he is, he's away.
So that concludes the fly fishing section of the DVD. And as you can see, it's a very visual way to fish and a very exciting way to fish. And as Les said earlier, it's not hard, anyone can do it. It just takes a bit of practice on the back lawn. So get out there and get into it.